President Obama says what happened was because of a culture of irresponsibility and greed. You buy that?
Well, certainly those things are all involved. If people weren't greedy, it wouldn't have happened. But people have always been greedy, so it seems like an odd thing to say blame it on greed. How come people, weren't investment bankers on Wall Street greedy in the 1990s? Of course they were.
Yes,
so the question is, what exactly changed? And again, I think one of the big things was the unprecedented easy money policies of the Federal Reserve.
What is the solution?
They need to end the bailout mentality and let the profit and loss system return. So people know if they start a business and they do well, they keep the money, but if they don't do well, they go out of business.
Dr. Murphy, talk a little bit about this. The Bahamas is, of course, following the suit of the United States of America. And the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, has called it a good thing. You don't obviously agree with them.
Well, no, I don't. The IMF, I don't think, has a particularly good track record advising smaller countries. I mean, again, if you look at some of these places, they very much regret what happened when the IMF comes in and tells them what to do, and they follow the advice, and then they end up, being economic basket cases. So I'm very suspicious of the IMF's recommendations. I think the Bahamas, to your credit, from my point of view, I don't think you've gone as far out of down this path as the United States has, even as a share of your economy. I don't think it's been as aggressive, and actually a lot of your tax system I think is much better in many respects than the U.S. approach. That I think here that you have more of an emphasis on savings and investment, that people aren't penalized as much with the tax code if they plow money back into their businesses.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say that the problem is that your economy is so intricately tied to the U.S. economy.
So
if I'm right in my predictions about the U.S. being awful and the banking sector being awful, you guys being so dependent on tourism and financial services, so it's I don't have a silver bullet to give you, except just to try to say that I think people should be prepared for the fact that the U.S., in my opinion, is not about to turn the corner. But for me, I almost don't want to go down the road of how do we get the politicians to see things from our point of view. I try to focus more on educating regular people, so at least if I can change their minds, at least have more people thinking, realizing what the dangers are.
But what can the average person do?
Part of why I want to educate people, if I am right that price inflation is coming, is they need to prepare themselves financially so they don't get wiped out when it happens.
In terms of the dominance of the United States currency, is it really under threat, as some people seem to suggest?
I think it is. I mean, all I can say for sure is you've seen talk in the last 6 months, various central banks saying things like, well, maybe we should move to a basket of currencies, or maybe we should introduce gold, or we should have the IMF issue special drawing rights and things like that. They weren't talking like that even a year ago. And so this sort of talk, because the whole point of having a dollar or a piece of paper that's not really backed by anything, you need to have confidence in it. And so the whole world monetary system is very fragile, and it rests on public confidence. And so to have central bankers talking like this is very unusual. So I think that means behind the scenes, things really are in disarray. I don't know if that means next year it's going to happen or if it means 10 years from now, but certainly the speculation about moving away from the dollar is something you haven't heard.
Right now, if I were to buy some stocks, where would be the growth industries in the world today and the next couple of years? What do you say?
I would look more towards things like commodities and precious metals and maybe like real estate or low-income rental units, things like that. So particular companies I'm leery of just because I think the economy is going to be bad. But if price inflation comes, things like commodities, which will be inflation hedges, is what I look for. As
an economist, what are the important data that you must take a look at and evaluate on a daily basis?
I look at things like the price of gold and yield on government securities out of the United States, because my big fear right now is, on top of just the sluggish economy coming from all the government interventions, is the Fed's pumped so much liquidity into the system that I'm worried that there's going to be large price inflation.
Why the price of gold?
Well, because the price of gold, I think,
gives you what indication?
Well, if you were an investor and you were studying certain things and you thought that, okay, this money that Bernanke's pumped into the banks, if you saw that, okay, this is really going to start trickling in the next few months and that's going to raise prices, I think everybody, once the price inflation's underway, they would rush to gold. And so if I knew 3 months beforehand that price inflation was going to be in double digits, I would go and I would buy gold. Would be a great thing to have because I think that would shoot up in value.
Right.
And so right now, I look at gold to see, are investors, ahead of the game, and are they rushing to gold?